Need a drum roll.
All right, everybody, here we are. It has been years and years since our last Bible study back in May. We're here this evening to pick up where we left off after we do just a little bit of review. For those of you who might be watching this on YouTube, let me remind you it is available on Zoom as well. If you're watching it on Zoom, I'm not recording them on Zoom, I'm recording them on YouTube. So you can find this and all the other Bible studies we've done the last 2 years on the YouTube channel under Bible studies on the playlists. They're listed by name. So we're glad to have you here with us. So let's do a little bit of a review. I always feel like getting a running start is a good thing. So we started this series whenever we started years ago, feels like, by looking at the story of Ruth and Boaz, the beginning of really sort of the beginning of the line of David, which is eventually going to bring us to the line of Jesus as well. We covered the move of Naomi and her family to Moab, the death of all the men, and then the ladies came back, Ruth and Naomi. Ruth fell into a relationship with Boaz. They had a child who became the father of David and his brothers and sisters. And so we sort of picked up after talking a little bit about Saul, because we have to, even though we might not really want to. King Saul was selected by the people to be their king because he looked the part, had absolutely no qualities whatsoever that made him adequate to the task. He just looked noble and regal, which just goes to remind you can't judge a book by its cover. We saw how Saul rejected the Lord's influence. He did ridiculously rebellious and disobedient things. Samuel, the prophet, said, God is done with you. He is going to take the kingdom out of your hands and give it to somebody else. And so in 1 Samuel 16, we learn about Samuel going to Bethlehem to find the house of Jesse, to anoint one of the sons there as the next king of Israel, God's people. We see that anointing in chapter 16. In chapter 17, which may or may not be out of place historically, in chapter 17 we see David going off to visit his brothers at the front. Wow, my hands look really big right there. He's taking supplies to his soldier brothers and finds the army of Israel and the king of Israel cowering every time the Philistine champion comes out to challenge them. It's been going on for weeks. And so, we're familiar with the story. David says, I'm not afraid to fight him. God's on my side. Let's go. And so he takes his rock and knocks down the giant, cuts his head off, and becomes a military hero. He is a celebrity, well-known and loved by everybody because the Philistines were dirty dogs. All right, so that's chapter 17. In chapter 18, I should have been doing my little flippy charts here.
Oh, man.
I forgot all about them, even though I went to great pains to make them. Saul, Samuel, and David.
Colored them all in.
Wow.
You even colored them all in.
So here's the Valley of Elah, where the battle took place. If you're on YouTube, sorry, it's backwards. And here is the close version of the Valley of Elah battle. You can see there who's on what side of the creek. And then we get to chapter 18. David becomes a troubadour, minstrel, court musician to keep crazy Saul under control, peaceful, free of anxiety. And Saul gets more and more jealous in chapter 18 and 19, tries to kill David. In chapter 20, we see the relationship between David and Saul's son Jonathan. Jonathan is probably at least a little older than David. Someplace I read just this week said that Jonathan may have been like 42 and and David would have been something like 28 at one point. So there, a considerable gap, but they were incredibly close friends. They worked out a way to alert each other about the king's intentions. We discussed all that. In chapter 21, we see David heading off to the city of Nob, okay, which is here. This is hard to do backwards. Gibeah of Saul is where the capital is. That's where Saul's throne is. But David ran down to Nob and met with the priest. We see David heading off in chapter 21 to go to Gath, which is over in Philistine territory. In 22 and 23, we see crazy King Saul after David. He begins his hot pursuit of him all over the countryside. He's done nothing wrong. He is a fugitive from justice. You can hear the music from The Fugitive going in your head. Whichever version you prefer, that David Jansen. It's in there somewhere. Yeah. I kind of like the one with Harrison Ford myself. So. Anyway, Saul is pursuing David. In chapter 23, he deals with some traitors, some rats, the people from Ziph. The Ziphites have gone up to Saul to say, hey, we know where David is. He's hiding out near us. Why don't you come and get him? And so that happens. It goes badly. Saul has to break off because the Philistines were raiding, so he has to go back home. In 24, David and Saul are together in the cave and didn't know it. David spares Saul's life when he had the perfect opportunity to bring it all to an end. But he refused to raise his hand against the Lord's anointed king. Chapter 25 is the little kind of side story about Nabal and Abigail, how David ends up marrying Abigail after Nabal dies. I think probably as a result of God's judgment on him for being a hose head. In chapter 26, that's where we are. So that's a very quick, very unscholarly review of everything we've talked about David so far. So here we are. We are sparing David's life, or David is sparing Saul's life. We are going to be in chapter 26. So go ahead and memorize this map.
Sure.
There were some of those the last time we were together. It's possible I may even have one. I had endeavored earlier this week or last week to go through. If anybody needs one, I got one.
I need one.
Oh, that's another one.
It's a new. Well, it's one from before, but it's these chapters here, 24 to 27. I had endeavored to get a map and then trace all of David's steps, and decided that that was not going to be in my best interest because it's kind of crazy where all he went. You can see that is a lot of loop-de-loops and back and forths, and they did a much better job than I could. So Chapter 26 of 1 Samuel. Let's take a look, shall we? The NIV heading is David again spares Saul's life. The Ziphites went to Saul at Gibeah and said, "Isn't David hiding on the hill of Hachilah, which faces Jeshimon?" So Saul went down to the desert of Ziph with his 3,000 select Israelite troops to search there for David. Saul made his camp beside the road on the hill of Hachilah, facing Jeshimon, but David stayed in the wilderness. When he saw that Saul had followed him there, he sent out scouts and learned that Saul had definitely arrived. Then David set out and went to the place where Saul had camped. He saw where Saul and Abner, son of Ner, the commander of the army, had lain down. Saul was lying inside the camp and with the army encamped around him. David then asked Ahimelech the Hittite and Abishai, son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, "Who will go down into the camp with me to Saul?" "I'll go with you," said Abishai. So David and Abishai went to the army by night, and there was Saul lying asleep inside the camp with his spear stuck in the ground near his head. Abner and the soldiers were lying around him. That's probably a good place to stop for right now. All right, so the Ziphites are back in the scene again. We read about them in chapter 23, and here they are again, extremely loyal to Saul, probably looking for some favors. They've come back to the capital to say, "We're pretty sure David is hiding on this hill down in our territory." So the king grabs 3,000 select Israelite troops. These are not just new recruits. These are battle-tested veterans. They are hand-selected for this mission. They're going to go back down to the desert of Ziph, into the wilderness, where they have been 3 chapters ago, to try to find David and hunt him down. This hill is toward Jeshimon. Jeshimon means wilderness, desolation, desert, wasteland. It's probably not an ideal place to be. It is some sort of open wilderness there, close to the Dead Sea. It appears to be the same location as in chapter 23, verse 19 and 24. So Saul and his 3,000 troops arrive in the area, and David hears that has happened. So he's got his eyes open, as any fugitive would, constantly looking over his shoulder to see who is coming after him. He saw the troops camping near the hill, and so he went in for a closer look and saw where King Saul and General Abner, who also happens to be Saul's cousin, are lying down. They're resting. He wanted to get closer to Saul and asked for some backup from a couple of young men who were not just physically close to him, but closer in relationship. One of them is named Abishai. Abishai is David's nephew, the son of David's sister Zeruiah, and Abishai is also the brother of Joab, who is David's general commander-in-chief. So Abishai is kind of a big deal. He's the brother of the military.
So they're not Hittites?
No,
Okay.
they're not. But there is a Hittite named Ahimelech.
Yes.
I don't know what it is about the Hittites. We'll read later on in David's life that there is a Hittite who also really loved David. His name was Uriah. Heth is not very far away. If you're from Heth, you're Hittite. but Ahimelech is not the one who ends up going. Abishai goes with David. It is a dangerous mission. It is potentially a suicide run. He is heading down not just into the enemy camp, but to the heart of it where the king is going to be. So Abishai and David sneak down the hill, go across the valley, end up at the edge of the Israelite camp. They can see that over in the middle of the camp, that's where the king and his commander-in-chief are. That's where they're resting. They're not in tents. This is not like a long-term, we're going to be here forever, so let's set up camp. This is everybody laying on the ground with their knapsack underneath their head. And the picture that we have is that Saul is here in the middle with Abner, and around him are rings of military hierarchy. The expendable guys, whoever they might happen to be, the young guys are on the outside edge, and the closer you get to the king, the higher in rank that they go. Okay, big circle. Everybody is there to protect the king and the general. And so Abishai and David tiptoe their way into this circle to stand beside Saul and Abner. And they find Saul sound asleep. Everybody is sound asleep. And beside the king's head is his water bottle, his canteen, his jug, probably with whatever his royal seal may have been, and his spear. The royal spear is jammed into the ground right there beside Saul's head, too.
That's convenient.
Yeah.
This had to be a miracle.
He wanted to take advantage of it.
I believe that God's hand is absolutely in this,
Oh, yeah, there's no way.
in this deal.
Yeah, there's no way you could do that.
All right, so that takes us down through verse 7. Let's read a little bit more. Abishai said to David, I'm sure he certainly is whispering at this point, today God has delivered your enemy into your hands. Now, let me pin him to the ground with one thrust of the spear. I won't strike him twice. But David said to Abishai, don't destroy him. Who can lay a hand on the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? As surely as the Lord lives, he said, the Lord himself will strike him. Or his time will come and he will die, or he'll go into battle and perish. But the Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. Now, get the spear and water jug that are near his head, and let's go. So David took the spear and water jug near Saul's head, and they left. No one saw or knew about it, nor did anyone wake up. They were all sleeping because the Lord had put them into a deep sleep.
Wow.
Okay.
They had help.
And verse 12.
Yep.
All right, so Abishai's suggestion is, oh my gosh, we're right here. There's a spear, his own spear. Let's stab him, kill him with his own spear. How perfect is that? And David's answer is absolutely not. Now the same thing happened a few chapters ago. The guys in the cave with David and King Saul said to David, he has delivered Saul into your hands. Your enemy is right here. We can be done with all this. Let's stop running. Let's kill this man and be done. You've been anointed the king. Let's make it happen. There David said, no, we're not gonna murder the Lord's anointed king. Here, same answer. I'm not going to raise my hand against God's anointed king. No, we will not. We will not assassinate him. Now, I think Abishai is going, okay, it'd be real easy, super easy. We could do it real quiet, just one with his very own royal spear, which is probably the exact spear that Saul has thrown at David on a couple of occasions and at his own son. This royal spear has got some history, and how perfectly ironic would that be for David to give the command to kill the king with his own spear. And that could have gone one of two ways. One way it could have gone is that the hunt may have finally been over. Hey, it's done. I'm the king. Saul is dead. Life is good. Or what I think would have been more likely, and probably shows some wisdom on David's part, that it would have gotten a lot more bloody. It could have been a lot more brutal, because if it's not a quiet death, then Abner and all the rest of those soldiers wake up, and here are these two dudes in the middle, totally surrounded, and they're going to be toast. That would have been a nightmare for David and Abishai. Wisely, respectfully, David chooses to ignore the offer to assassinate the king. Who can lay a hand on the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? As much as I think David wants to be the king, he wants it to be on God's terms and in God's time. He's not going to do anything to hurry it up. That is not his place. The text here shows that David figures that God is going to work this out in one of three ways. One, God is just going to take care of Saul himself. He'll have a heart attack like Nabal. He'll just keel over dead. He'll get eaten by worms. He'll fall into a hole in the ground. He'll get eaten by a lion. However, God is going to work it out. Or, number two, maybe he's going to die of natural causes. He's the king. He's probably not taking super great care of himself. He's an older guy anyway. Maybe he's just going to die of natural causes. Or, number three, maybe Saul is going to die in battle. However it's going to happen, God has said Saul is not going to live forever, because none of us do, and David will become the king. So he is not going to do anything to push that ahead.
What faith? He's going to leave it in God's hands. Not faith, it's trust.
That is not my fight to. That's not my battle to wage. This is God's deal. He said he's going to work it out. I'm just going to have to trust him. I'm going to have to wait on him, as painful as it may be. There's probably a lesson for us in that. God gives us promises, and we need to wait on him, regardless of how excruciatingly painful it may be, how much suffering or inconvenience or discomfort there may be. We just need to trust God. Okay? Now, before David and Abishai leave the camp, they pick up the royal spear and the royal water jug and take off. Nobody wakes up because God put everybody to sleep. Now, the word that is used for deep sleep usually comes about in the Old Testament through supernatural means. If you go way back to the beginning in Genesis 2, after God created Adam, this is the same word that God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep. He whacked him over the head with a frying pan. He is out cold, and he is just out and oblivious. God seems to have knocked out all these Israelite soldiers, at least for a little while. I'm glad that God takes care of some things like that. Like, how's it going to work? I don't know. This is God's plan. He's got it all figured out. Right? Now, so I get to this point and say, well, maybe Abishai's plan would have worked because they're all totally, dead to the world. They probably wouldn't hear anything. But again, David was wise and respectful and chose not to go with that plan. Okay. Any comments or questions before we move ahead? I sort of forget to ask that. I need to do that in a class.
So this is happening at Ziph, right there.
Yes, down there in the wilderness.
Below Hebron.
Yeah, straight out from En Gedi, there where it says the wilderness of Judah. They're probably in that neighborhood someplace. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so did Bathsheba come before the wife that he married that was Saul's daughter?
We haven't got there yet.
Or that?
No. Michal was that the king's daughter's name. She was the first wife that was given to David, but you'll remember that Saul got mad at David and just married her off to somebody else.
Oh, okay. No, I forgot. Okay.
So he's got a wife now. He's got Abigail, and it seems like there's one other one, a name I can't remember, but we'll catch up to it in a chapter.
Okay.
So David has Abigail with him, and potentially one other wife. Later on, he is going to have Michal come back into the house, and it's, surprisingly not a great situation. Bathsheba with David happens much later.
Oh, okay.
After he's had several children with his other wives.
Okay.
Okay. All right. But that's a good question. So let's pick it up here in verse 13. Then David crossed over to the other side. That isn't mystical language about death and passing over. There's no mediums involved here. He go over to the other side. He's just gone to the other side of the creek, the other side of the road. He's on the other side of the valley now. Okay. I don't want you to think John Edwards. Is that the right name? Yeah, that he's involved there. He's not. He has gone over to the other side, stood on top of the hill some distance away. There was a wide space between them, and he called out to the army and to Abner, son of Ner, "Aren't you going to answer me, Abner?" Abner replied, "Who are you who calls to the king?" David said, "You're a man, aren't you? And who's like you in Israel? Why didn't you guard your lord the king? Someone came to destroy your lord the king. What you have done is not good. As surely as the Lord lives, you and your men must die, because you did not guard your master, the Lord's anointed. Look around you. Where's the king's spear? Where's the king's water jug? Where are they? They were near his head." Saul recognized David's voice and said, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" David replied, "Yes, it is, my lord the king." And he added, "Why is my lord pursuing his servant? What have I done, and what wrong am I guilty of? Now let my lord the king listen to his servant's words. If the Lord has incited you against me, then may he accept an offering. If, however, people have done it, may they be cursed before the Lord. They have driven me today from my share in the Lord's inheritance, and have said, 'Go serve other gods.' Now do not let my blood fall to the ground far from the presence of the Lord. The king of Israel has come out to look for a flea as one hunts for a partridge in the mountains." Then Saul said, "I have sinned. Come back, David, my son. Because you considered my life precious today, I will not try to harm you again. Surely I have acted like a fool and have been terribly wrong." David answered, "Here's the king's spear. Let one of your young men come over and get it. The Lord rewards everyone for their righteousness and faithfulness. The Lord delivered you into my hands today, but I would not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed." Kind of ironic, since he's also the Lord's anointed. As surely as I valued your life today, so may the Lord value my life and deliver me from all trouble, like you. Then Saul said to David, may you be blessed, David, my son. You will do great things and surely triumph. So David went on his way, and Saul returned home. All right, so they've got the water jug, they've got the spear, they're heading back to their own camp, probably on the other side of the hill somewhere. David calls out to the army. He calls Abner by name. I do think it's interesting that Abner's dad's name is Ner, so he'll be Abner Nerson. If you're going to use the son of, or he would be Abner Ben-Ner. Abner Ben-Ner. Anyway, he calls out to Abner to say, essentially, hey, what are you guys doing over there? And Abner calls back, who in the world do you think you are? It seems like the biggest issue is sort of between the lines. You've woken up the king. Why are you trying to harass the king while he's sleeping? Who are you anyway? And so
you didn't recognize David's voice?
He probably didn't. Saul clearly did. So David kind of gives it right back to him. Hey, you're a man, aren't you? What kind of a man are you? Because I was right there, beside your master. I was beside the king. I could have killed him, and you were asleep. You were snoring. You and all the rest of your people were asleep. What kind of guards are you? You cannot even protect the king from somebody like me. And, some general you are. Some man you are. So, because you didn't protect the Lord's anointed, you and all of your men ought to die. You must die. You did not protect the one you should have been protecting. I do think it's a little interesting that back in the cave deal, when David came out to call out to Saul, he's like stricken with grief and remorse. Like, I can't believe I did this. I shouldn't have done that. We do not see that here. Clearly enough time has passed, and David and his men are getting really tired of this. There's no, I shouldn't have done it. It's like, hey, why are you still after me? Why are you still chasing me? Is that you? Is that you, Dave? He's just woken up from a sound sleep, supernatural, given sleep. Is that you, David, my son? It's still kind of cloudy. In the movie that I make, that's how it'll be. He's still yawning and stretching and, looking for a cup of coffee or something. Is that you, David? Why are you chasing me? David is far away. He's across the valley. He can holler at the king. The king can understand him. But he gets him with the same kind of questions that we've seen before. What have I done to deserve this kind of treatment? Why do you insist on pursuing me? Why are you bothering to look for me? I'm nothing. I'm a flea. You're chasing after me like you would chase after a partridge in the woods. Now the thing is, in David's time, there had been partridges everywhere. You can, scoop them up with a net. Why in the world are you hunting this one specific one all the way through the woods? What have I done? If God has put you up to this, then I'll accept it. Let's make an offering and make things right. But David knows it's not God that's put him up to it. It's other men who've continued to goad the king, to point out that David is a threat to his throne. And if that's the case, let's just be done. And we don't have a photo or even an emoji to help us understand Saul's response, but it sort of seems like his response to David is genuinely repented. What does he say? I have sinned. Come back, David. You considered my life precious. I won't try to harm you again. I've been a fool. I've been terribly wrong. Because we're Americans and we have been through several years of deception and have developed an unhealthy mistrust of anybody who is a leader, we tend not to believe these kind of statements. Like, yeah, sure, whatever. But I sort of feel like that Saul is being genuine based on what we see in the chapters that are to come. Okay? Saul says, I want you to come back. I won't try to harm you again. And I believe that those sentiments are appreciated, but fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 or 4 or 5 dozen times. I think that's kind of where David is. I appreciate your sorrow over the way things have been. I'm just going to go ahead and keep my distance. I've been righteous. I've been faithful to God, and I've been faithful to you. I haven't tried to injure you. Even now twice, you have been right here in the palm of my hot little hands. I could have ended your life, but I refused to do so. I think essentially David is saying to Saul, God values my life. I need you to recognize that God values my life as well. God is going to deliver me from any other trouble that comes, just like he has delivered me over and over again. And what's Saul's response?
May you be blessed, my son David.
Okay, maybe in sort of his not quite awake fog, he is speaking what is actually the truth. You're going to do great things. God is going to give you victory. He's predicting the idea of blessing is partially about predictions that will come true. You think back to Isaac and Jacob and Esau. The blessing were words that were spoken over a son that there was a prediction to come, that they would come true. I'm sure that's just the bass player. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. So then is Saul genuinely being honest here? Is this the last time he chases David? This is the last time.
Spoiler alert, this is the last time that they will see each other.
They will see each other. Oh, really?
Saul gives the blessing, predicting great things, predicting triumph, victory for David. Calls him my son. Remember, as we've just touched on a minute ago, David was actually his son-in-law because he was married to Saul's daughter, Michal. And so, great to see you. Thanks for coming. Best wishes. Don't forget to write. And they go their separate ways. Saul goes back to the capital at Gibeah, and David goes on his way. And we'll see in the next chapter that David leaves Israel. He leaves Judah. Rather than taking a chance of being in the same place with Saul, he heads to the land of the Philistines, which is a really bold move based on what's already happened with the Philistines. But it would seem like he feels his chances at survival and peace are better with the enemy of God's people than at home with the leader of God's people. He had said in his little soliloquy there, don't spill my blood far from my inheritance. He's saying, I don't want to die outside of my homeland. I want to be here. But clearly, David wisely chooses to put some distance between him and King Saul. This is the 5th time that David has escaped from Saul. It is the last time. They won't have anything to do with each other again. The next time David sees Saul, Saul will be dead. Okay, so this is kind of a major turning point in their movie. Okay, any deep thoughts about anything so far? Questions?
Does the wife that Saul gave away come back? Okay.
She will
Or
come
am I
back.
jumping ahead, sorry.
She will come back by, I think it's by the end of 1 Samuel. She'll return, and I sort of feel like David will wish that she didn't, but
That's okay, he's got a whole bunch of other ones probably.
he has plenty. So I was considering the line that Saul makes there in verse 21. Surely I have acted like a fool and have been terribly wrong. I just got thinking about exactly how foolish he's been. If there's like a way to sort of qualify and quantify that. Well, how foolish has he really been? Okay, so how many soldiers does he have with him in this chapter? 3,000. Are these noobs? Are these fresh green recruits that you can pay a nickel and a peanut butter sandwich? No. These are battle-tested veterans. These guys all have rank and battle experience. So they're sure they're a little spendier. He's paying like E9s, not E1s here. Plus all of their benefits, they get better rations, better accommodations, better equipment. And so he's got these 3,000 troops with him. They have come from Gibeah, which is up north and west of the Dead Sea. And they have traveled down into this wilderness, which by my really awful calculations, according to one map, is probably at least 25 miles. How far can an army march in a day? About half of that. Somewhere between 8, 9, 10 miles, maybe 13 if they're really pushing it hard. So Saul's got these 3,000 men marching for 2 days to get to this place. 2 nights, 2 days worth of food, 2 days worth of all their supplies, and he's dragging them all around to kill this little 25-year-old, 28-year-old little rebel. Okay? The thing we have to keep in mind is that for every step that they take away from the capital, that's one more step they're going to have to take back. So at a minimum, they've got 4 days of marching there and back, and all their food and water for the troops, for their livestock, for whatever else is going on. Now, in a seemingly unrelated note, when I was in college, our choir director told us, like the very first day of choir practice, when you are late, if you're 5 minutes late, you're not just 5 minutes late. Because there are 40 people in this choir, and all the rest of these people and myself are waiting on you. That is 5 minutes times 1, 2, 3, 4, 40. You've wasted 200 minutes.
Wow.
Which is true.
Because you stole that many minutes from
It's
that many
your
people.
5 and your 5 and your 5. And,
I apologize.
This is not to get on you, Shirley, because if it was getting on you, it would also be getting on my lovely wife. Okay? So I'm applying Dr. Allen's logic here to King Saul's predicament. 3,000 men times 2 days.
Yeah.
So if my math skills are as good as they were, he has wasted the equivalent on round trip. We'll give him 4 days. That's the shortest it can be. He's wasted the equivalent of nearly 33 years on this one punk.
Wow.
This one young Turk.
Because of jealousy
And don't forget, this is the second time that they've been to this exact same spot. I mean, they were down here in Ziph 3 chapters ago. Here they've come back again. So 33 times 2, 66 years. Plus this isn't the only place that they chased him to. I mean, they chased him all the way down around to the bottom of the Dead Sea. And you know, all kinds of places. He has invested so much time and so much money and so much effort into hunting down this one man. And he says, I have been a fool.
He wasted all that time on a worthless cause.
When he should have been taking care of his people and protecting them, because the last time they were in this wilderness, they had to break off the chase because the Philistines were invading. If he'd been back on his throne where he belonged, there wouldn't have been a problem. There's a line in the movie The Man from Snowy River where, what's his bucket? Kirk Douglas says, don't throw effort after foolishness. That line has stuck with me, you know, since 1980, whatever, when that movie came out, 40 years ago. Oh my gosh, 40 years ago.
Oh, you're just a baby.
Yeah, but 40 years sounds like a really, really long time. Don't throw effort after foolishness. I think Saul has realized that it's all been for nothing. And so what I think is probably a moment of clarity says, I'm not going to chase you anymore. No, I don't. I will not try to harm you.
And it amazes me because he thought so highly of David, enough to give one of his daughters in marriage. I mean, he brought David into his home and David was just a kid out there, you know.
Shepherd. I wonder if it was jealousy
Well, I think
of him. He was a threat.
Jealousy, fear, anxiety. He is a wildly unstable, insecure guy.
He didn't get there overnight. I think he saw how great David actually was and David's potential. And then that little voice gets in the head. And
well, think back to Saul's anointing, his coronation as king. All of Israel is gathered to see the new king, to watch him be crowned. And where do they find Saul? Hiding in luggage. He is insecure and freaked out, and so he is hiding behind the feed sacks and the baggage and all the supplies when he's supposed to be on the platform being crowned. I think we see he's got some natural tendencies that way, but the whispers in his ear, either from spiritual forces or physical, relational forces, his advisors like Abner, to say, hey, this isn't good. You got to get rid of this enemy. He's a major threat to you. Give it a chance, he's going to rub you out. Poor stupid Saul. This is the second time that the people of Ziph have made trouble for David with Saul. One of the Bibles that I used to do my studying is called the Chronological Study Bible. It's kind kind of fun. Puts everything
In the order
In
of
order.
which it happened?
Yeah.
That would make it easier for me to maybe understand.
You should find one of those. It is actually a really great tool, because they, when we look at the Old Testament, we see 1st and 2nd Samuel, we see 1st and 2nd Kings, we see 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and then there's the book of the Psalms, and there's the book of Proverbs and Song of Songs. We saw those very separate. So in the chronological Bible, they say, all right, this is the song that David wrote in this moment, so we're going to put it right here where it belongs.
Wow.
It really does give you a lot of insight in both directions. Because you read through the Psalms and think, well, he's having a really bad day. You read through it this way, it's like, oh, no wonder he was crying about, being in trouble all the time. Okay? So we read Psalm 54 back in chapter 23, but the chronological Bible has it right here with chapter 26. Psalm 54 says, "Save me, O God, by your name. Vindicate me by your might. Hear my prayer, O God. Listen to the words of my mouth. Arrogant foes are attacking me. Ruthless people are trying to kill me. People without regard for God. Surely God is my help. The Lord is the one who sustains me. Let evil recoil on those who slander me. In your faithfulness, destroy them. I will sacrifice a free will offering to you." We said a little bit ago. "I will praise your name, Lord, for it is good. You have delivered me from all my troubles, and my eyes have looked in triumph on my foes." Okay, now with the background of 1 Samuel 26, we read through this psalm. It's like it's like a whole new understanding. Because David said to Saul, look, if God is the one who has put you up to this, then let's sacrifice an offering. I will sacrifice a free will offering to you. David is, I think, kind of not exactly making a deal, but laying it all out here. Lord, if I have done something wrong, if I need to pay, if I need to make a sacrifice, I'll do it. But please, let's be done with this. My eyes have looked in triumph on my foes. Standing there at the top of the hill, looking at snoring troops. I've looked at them. I've seen them. Deliver me. You have delivered me from my troubles. You're going to continue to deliver me. I just think that, trying to put these things together really kind of intensifies our understanding of what's going on in David's head and in David's heart. I did, from this prayer, wrote down some truths about God. Save me, O God, by your name. Vindicate me by your might. Hear my prayer, O God. Listen to the words of my mouth. I wrote down, God hears our prayers. Duh. Arrogant foes are attacking. Ruthless people are trying to kill me. People without regard. God brings salvation and rescue. Surely God is my help. The Lord is the one who sustains me. Let evil recoil on those who slander me. In your faithfulness, destroy them. Okay. We should know that God can set wrong things right. He really can fix it. We've read there in verse 4 that God is the sustainer not just of all life, but He's also the sustainer of the individual. Hebrews talks about that God is what keeps everything sort of spinning and moving. He's the creator and sustainer of all things. But it's not just the universe that God keeps moving. God also sustains just little old me. God is faithful to His faithful people. I wrote down, obviously God is worthy of praise and sacrifice. He is good. His name is good. It's worthy of praise and honor. And the last thing, you have delivered me from my troubles. I just wrote down that God is deliverer. He picks us up and takes care of us, gets us out of the situation. Maybe not right at the moment when we'd appreciate it the most, but he will deliver us. Sure.
He'll help us with our individual battles. We just have to ask him in faith. And he'll help us.
We really do need to take a cue from David, and in the midst of whatever's going on, to cry out to God, to pour out our heart. I was having a conversation with somebody in the last week or so. I don't really know how to talk to God about things. Like, well, you just talk to him. What's on your mind? Tell him. It's not a surprise anyway, but he needs to hear from you. You would tell your spouse how you're feeling, right? Or you would tell your parents what you've been thinking about, what's really weighing you down. Just talk. Let him know. David, many of these prayers don't appear to be very polished and elegant and luxurious. It's just, God, I hate this. I lay awake in bed all night long. I'm crying like a baby here. Save me. Rescue me. Can we be done with this? But I'm going to trust you. I'm going to praise you. I know you're going to rescue me. Sooner will be better than later. But I'm going to remain faithful.
It just sounds too simple.
Oh, I think we often make prayer way too hard.
We think we have to follow all those exact rules, and we've even talked about prayer order, but sometimes my brain's not organized enough to lay it out that way. But he still listens if it's just sincere, discussion you're having.
I know I've talked about it. It's been a while though. There was an elder in the church where I grew up that every time he prayed, "Oh, eternal God and gracious Heavenly Father." Well, that's great, but I don't know. That feels kind of practiced.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dear God, this stinks. I am so tired of this. You got to get me out of here. I trust you, but seriously, enough is enough. Whether it's a physical thing or a relationship thing or a financial thing or whatever, I'm really going to be glad when you bring this to an end. So
He's real, so we can have a real communication with him. What did you say was the name of that chronological Bible that you used?
Tricky. Chronological Study Bible.
Just chronological. Because I was Googling and I saw a whole lot of.
Yeah, if you'd like, I'll try to remember to bring mine over next week and you can take a look at it.
Okay.
But it's got, so it's got everything kind of cut and pasted into the right order, but it also has big blocks of study material about the culture, about the geography. I really like it. It's been one of the tools that I've appreciated very much since I had it.
Yeah, because it's hard for me to put it all together and the order things happen, so I should get me one. Thank you.
Well, friends, it's great to have you here. Everybody out there, it's great to have you as well. I'm going to sign off for now. We'll see you next week for chapter 27.